Welcome back to the Imaginary Gallery. This is TJ, your host. We're going to delve into the Narcissist bag of tricks. The topic for the evening is lies, dishonesty, deception, which is a hallmark of the cluster B creature. Before we begin with that, I wanted to take your mind to a different place so the concepts to appear will make a little more sense. I'm going to begin with what I call a description of an emotional consequence. The idea is to get your mind in the right place. One particular day, I was driving home. I lived in a neighborhood that had a lot of squirrels. They were everywhere. I drove slowly up the street and was about to turn into my driveway, and evidently, out of nowhere, a squirrel appeared, and I saw the tail out of the corner of my eye. It ran straight towards the car and the wheel. I felt the crunch, and I got a sick feeling of, a squirrel just ran under my wheel. I turned on into the driveway and was dreading what was to come because I could feel that chunk or whatever it was. When I stopped the car, took the key out, I heard a sound I'd never heard before. I knew squirrels chirped, but I heard a screaming sound and my heart sank. I thought, oh my goodness, I just hit that squirrel. I didn't want to, but I turned back and I saw its body laying on its back on the street. Because I'm an animal lover and I have empathy, even though I know I didn't set out to run over this squirrel, but I hit it. So I went out there and saw it, and evidently it broke a leg or two or three, and it was laying there screaming, and tears came out of my eyes because I know I didn't do it on purpose, but still just seeing it there screaming and thinking I didn't know squirrels could do that, and it was just laying in the middle of the street, and I thought, if that squirrel lays there, some other car is going to plow by and smash it. Imagine being a squirrel, having your legs all mangled up, not being able to move, and having a truck plow over you. I thought, I went over to it and talked to it, even though it probably didn't understand English, but I was like, I'm so sorry, I didn't know you were there, and I just was saying whatever would come out, and I took a stick and moved it aside because I thought the least I could do was get it out of harm's way. I'm using this as an example of an emotional consequence. In this case, it was not intentional. Regardless of the circumstances, the facts are my car hit a squirrel, a creature of nature. That squirrel, as a result, was laying on the ground and couldn't do anything. And I felt awful about it. We're going to switch on over now to the cluster B creatures, and I wanted to give the example of the emotional consequence, which for me was my actions generated an emotional response. We're discussing dishonesty and lies. With my experience in childhood and beyond, I've been around a lot of other people, many different kinds, from many different places, and typically if I get involved in a primary group of kids, adults, whatever they were throughout the years, I would be talking one-on-one with somebody. Sometimes they would tell a story, and I'd hear it, and it wouldn't sound real. So I would say, is that story true? And sometimes these people would say, oh, yes, it's true. And I would think, that person's probably lying, and it might bother me. So maybe the next time I see them a day or two later, I might say, hey, I was thinking again about that story you told. Are you sure that's true? Because I know from personal experience, if I have told a dishonest tale, which I used to do when I was a kid a lot, and if somebody came to me and actually drew attention to it and said, was that story true? I have that empathy or whatever it is probably a weakness in these monsters' minds, but guilt, shame, whatever, and if they asked again, I'd be like, oh no, and I'd be thinking, like the consequence of squirrel, I told them a fake story, and they're really concerned, and they're asking about it, and typically I would be, okay, fine, I'd tell them. Same thing goes for the people that I deal with who would tell a tall tale, and I would say, come here, listen, are you really serious? Did that story really happen? And I'm used to the people breaking down and saying, okay, yes, fine, yes, the truth was blah, 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 blah. And I'm the same way as far as tricks. I've played pranks on people, like I've discussed in another video, how I would work in a call center and I'd have other friends that worked there in different business areas, and I would go to the free phone on the wall and dial their number and pretend to be like a customer that got misrouted to them, and I would do a phony voice or whatever for fun. But the thing is with that, it's for fun, it's for entertainment, it's to see if I can get them to believe it and go along with it. But the key point here is there's a build-up. It's like a rush of fun and laughter, but part of the obligation to this game is there has to be the ending, which is, just kidding, that was me, or something. So it's fun to play with them, to mess with them, but I'm not planning on leaving it that way and running off. That's what we're discussing here as far as the narcissist, the covert monster. They don't have that emotional consequence. So like with that squirrel that I ran over, let's say if it was the narcissistic monster, it might see that squirrel in the road preoccupied with a nut or something, and then rev up their engine and deliberately run over it for fun, and then cheer when they actually feel it under the wheels. Because, why? They don't have that emotional consequence. For them, it's fun and games, and they might even justify, well, it's the squirrel's fault for being out in the street, it's not mine. Which is a completely different outlook from what mine was, but you have to learn to accept other people have completely different outlooks than you might, which helps you to understand the creature you're dealing with if there's a cluster B monster in your life at the moment. But yes, throughout childhood, I would pull that situation with others and say, tell me again, is this really true? And usually I could get the people to the breaking point. They would make a claim, and I would think about the claim and think of 10 different things that would indicate the claim probably isn't accurate, and I would even sit them down and say, look, are you sure that story's true? Because A, B, C all the way through. And most of the time, they'd be, okay, fine, yes, I lied. And they would tell. Let's skip on up to adulthood, and I've learned that there are those people that do not have that emotional consequence. They do not have the guilt, the empathy, any of that stuff. They simply are creatures that go through life doing this, doing that, saying this to get that, claiming they're this kind of person to get this in this situation, and then the next day claiming to be a different type of person to get something else. If anybody was to observe this person in all these places, they would be thinking this person is nothing. It's not real. It's fluid. It changes here for this and changes there for that. And if you're a real person, you'd know that people's value systems don't just fluctuate that drastically up and down here and there, but that's what you're dealing with. When you find one of these creatures, and typically they'll mirror you. So if you were the one who hit that squirrel and lived with your partner, and ran in the house in tears, screaming, oh, I can't believe I did this, oh, I killed the squirrel. If it's one of these narcissistic monsters, internally they're probably thinking, what a joke, who cares, that squirrel deserved it. But if they're trying to win you and stick their hooks into your life, and they're mirroring in the idealization phase, they'll probably say, oh, that poor squirrel, and they might even try to copy you. And that will make you think, oh, wow, this person's really in touch with the way I feel. Oh, and you'll feel closer to them. Beware. And fast forwarding to adult life, some of the cluster B creatures I've met, one was a particular person who really loved its cat. I was at one of those points where I had the gut feeling, I had the intuition that told me whatever story was being told was completely false. And so I tried my grade school childhood technique of, are you sure that story was true about such and such? Because I was like 99.999% sure that the story was false that I was being given. And you know those types of situations where all the evidence around it, all the details, all the stuff you already know points to the story you're being given is just not right. I'm an animal lover, remember, and this person seems to be a cat lover, so I figured I would use some leverage here, because I know how important my animals have been to me over the years, and I know they're special and sweet, unconditional love, unlike the cluster B monsters, or some other people, but I would try to think of the most sacred thing I could use, because remember, my history would be to push, 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 and then finally get the person to cave in and say, okay, yes, it was a lie. With these cluster B adult monsters, they have gone way beyond that. They don't have the emotional consequence, so they will just keep that lie going and going and going like the Energizer Bunny. So I would try something drastic like, okay, do you mean to say that you swear on that cat's life that last night you really did not do this terrible thing that I heard you did and saw that you did in pictures and so on, and you're insisting on your cat's life? Meaning, if you're telling a lie right now, your cat will be struck dead. And that's the implication. Well, to my surprise, the person said, no, the story is true exactly as I said it. And I was thinking, wow, how do you get to that point? Because it's a dead person. The reason I say all this is that eventually it came out that these were lies. But to look back on it and recap it, to think that person swore on its own cat's life to maintain that life. A therapist told me that evidently to this other person, swearing on a pet's life or anything doesn't mean anything to them. It means something to me. So here I am saying, certainly, if I say, do you swear on the pet's life, if it says that story's still true, then maybe it is. I still had the other feeling that it was a lie, and then it was just a shock to see the person sitting there staring me in the eye saying, yes, I swear on my pet's lives. The story I told you was true. And when you find out it wasn't, it's just a sickening feeling to think, what kind of void does that? What kind of person lives with themselves making such claims? Remember, there's no empathy, there's no shame, and that gives these creatures what they probably see as a special superpower, because they look at us, the goyim, or the regular people, that run out of the car in tears at a squirrel they hit, or felt so terrible about something they said to someone and go to apologize and so on, and they look at this stuff thinking, what are these fools doing? Because they don't feel the same way, but they do mirror us, so they see the things we do, try to copy it, but they've got this advantage as far as they're concerned, which is the dishonesty and the lies. I've seen in a few books about sociopathy, psychopathy, and so on, they'll start off like, imagine that you woke up today and you could do or say anything to anyone and there'd be no consequence. You could run to the teacher you hate, slap her in the face and stab her 10 times with a knife, and kick her, urinate on her, and then leave the schoolroom and there'd be no consequence. Well, that sounds like a fantasy, and if you really hate that teacher, it might be tempting, but that is the way the cluster B narcissist life is. But they couldn't very readily say that to people. Hi, today I wanted to kick my teacher and do this and this. They won't do that. They want to fit in, so if you run out and do your squirrel sorrow, they will try to mimic that in some way to appear to be similar to you. Problem is, you being real and genuine, you would know if you saw that same person going down to the lake and taking a BB gun and shooting a bunch of frogs. You think, wait a second, I thought you valued animal life and you're doing that. How? And then you get the usual insert retarded excuse here. Oh, I do love animals and don't believe in killing them. I just killed those frogs because... I've met several of these cluster B creatures who seem to be hell-bent on rushing into a relationship immediately, which you may have experienced. And sometimes it's just so fast, it's like, what's the rush? I've met a few of these that are pushing for that crap. It's like, we just met yesterday. Let's give it some time. I've often wondered, when I realize later what these people are, what would possibly be appealing to them with the idea of like a long-term committed type relationship, because they're loose hoas. They go here and there and keep this a secret and keep that a secret, and they're with as many partners as possible in the shortest amount of time. So I would wonder, okay, I know what this person is now, and why on earth was it wanting marriage so quickly? Well, it's easy. I've learned. Because they do not have that emotional consequence for doing bad things, it's almost as if they, again, feel they have a special superpower, and everything's covered with that. And it's covered up, too, so you won't see it. So they will find you to be their target because of something you have they want, but of course they probably won't tell you that. But if you question, well, why would such a loose person want to be with one? Because this is the way they like to organize things. Many of these creatures like to find their primary source of supply, which could be you, and they will be the perfect partner in front of you. They will do all the normal love bombing, which goes with the idealization phase, care about your every thought, and so on, because they're new. And when you're thinking in the future, like, this person knew that it had 6 other partners, how could it dare do this? The answer is because of that lack of guilt, empathy, shame, any of that, and emotional consequence. They've got that covered. So let's say you're a white man and this person likes you but also likes Latinas. Well, you can't be a white person and a Latina person. If you find out that person has a thing for Latinas, you can't expect this type of loose person to just decide, oh, when it's saying it wants to marry you, that, oh, so you're never going to want to look at another Latina again? And you'll get the stupid, oh, yeah, that's right, because I'm with you. I don't even think about that anymore. Even though you can look in their history and see that they've always chased after Latinas, because that doesn't fit with their agenda with you, they'll just say, oh, no, that's the past, I don't do that anymore. And you'll end up probably finding them running off with several Latinas. That's how these people operate. They're not in reality. They're living the fantasy world. They want something from you, so they will lie, be dishonest about everything, scam you just to get what they want from you. And if you try to look at them realistically, you can't. Well, you can, but you cannot discuss it with them. Like this one example, it would be if you found out 6 different times they snuck off with a Latina. You'd say, hey, when we first started dating, I told you I'm not a Latina, and I figured you'd probably be after them still because you love them so much, and you swore you wouldn't, and I thought you was 6. What's the deal? Well, these people can't self-reflect. They will make excuses. They will say, so what? They will say, I didn't know they were Latina. Who cares? Or whatever, and they will not give you an adult-to-adult conversation, and you will feel crazy made. Because if the two of you were looking at another couple experiencing this very same thing, it would be a no-brainer for either one of you. But because it's a cluster B creature, different story, and you'll be talking till you're blue in the face, and you will get nowhere. So if you're dealing with a creature like this, and they've mirrored your value system, you got to look at the things they do and compare that to what they claim, because in many cases, they're faking it. And it doesn't do any good to question it because insert retarded excuse, which doesn't solve anything. This was just a little discussion of dishonesty and lies. Hopefully it clarified something for you, especially if you're dealing with one of these creatures. And if you are, please try to escape as soon as possible.
I am the Narcopath. This is a special message.
I know. When you first laid eyes on me, it was love at first sight. I used that to my advantage. I don't know if you remember, I kind of jiggled my teeth around you to get your attention, and it worked. And you started following me up and down the campus hall. Yes, you did, and
I kind of acted shy, remember? Like I wasn't too interested. But I'd give you a little hint here and there. This was my technique for you. Because I've done everything to everyone. I've done anything you could think of horrible. I've done it. And worse. I knew I had to pretend to be prim and proper because I could tell that's what you were. So I acted uninterested and told you that I was afraid of getting too close to someone because I'd been hurt. Which, that wasn't difficult to make up my stories. I just reversed the roles and told you all the awful things I did to every single one of the guys and gals that I dated. And told you because of this experience, I don't feel comfortable getting close to anyone. You bought it, and you kept after it, and it was the bait that you took. You kept trying to show me how you were different. You kept bringing me flowers and gifts and cards and all kinds of stuff. And I just slowly opened up to you just a little at a time. And I had you convinced that I was so heartbroken by all these awful people. And it had you eaten out of my hand. And you had no idea what I had in store for you, now did you? That was all fake. I did all that just to get close to you. So then I could chew through your flesh at a later time. Now, would you have asked me out if I told you that's what my plan was all along? I don't think so. So I had to act innocent. I had to act sensitive. Ooh, well, it worked. It got you. And I got what I wanted out of you. And on to the next.
I am the Narcopath, and that is my lifestyle.
Hey, honey. I love this song. Come dance with me. Hey, hey, it's me. It's me? Hey, where you going? You don't want to dance with me? Ah.
I am the Narcopath.
And I'm a transgendered lesbian. Mm.